So guys, in this video, we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting rational expressions. And I'm going to remind you about what we know about basic fractions all the way back from middle school. So remember, if I have 2/5 plus 1/5, if I have the same denominator, see how they both have 5 in the denominator, then all I have to do with my fraction is keep the denominator exactly the same. So I'm going to have fifth still. But all I'm doing is adding my numerators together. So I'm doing 2 plus 1 is 3. So my answer would be 3/5. Okay, so again, think about if you were doing like on a number line, all right, and I broke up this line into fifths, right? So that would be 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 little segments there. So if I take 2/5, so that would be 1/5, 2/5, and I'm adding 1/5 to it, then I have a total of 3/5, right? That's why that makes sense. Okay, so going back, what if I don't have the same? So I haven't broken up the segment into equal parts. They're different kinds of parts. So I need to get a common denominator. All right, so if I have 1/3 minus 1/6, I can't add the 1 minus, or I can't subtract the 1 minus 1 because I don't have the same denominator. They're not divided evenly. It's like I'm trying to compare apples and oranges. So I need to get the same denominator. In order to do that with just plain old numbers, all I'm going to do is break these down into their factors. All right, so 6 is the same as 2 times 3. And then 3 is just 3 times 1. So that's just 3 times 1, or just 3. So if they have the same factor, then I don't want to repeat that at all. But if they have a factor that they do not have in common, I need to multiply the other one by that. So if you see how, if I write this, I have 1/3 minus 1/2 times 3. It's like this fraction right here is missing something, right? I don't have that 2 in the denominator. So in order to remedy that, I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2. Okay, and I'm allowed to do that, right? As long as I do that in top and bottom. Remember, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I didn't change this at all. So now my denominators look exactly the same, and I can rewrite this. So now I have 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. This is still 1, and 2 times 3 is 6. So now I have a fraction just like up here in the first one. I have common denominators, and now I can just do 2 minus 1 is 1. And I'm going to keep my common denominator the same. So my answer is 1/6. All right, so now let's do that down here. So 8 is, if we break this down into 2 times 4, that's fine, but I also need to break it down a little bit more because 4 can be broken down. So this is really 2 times 2 times 2. All right, and then over here, 6, we already said, is 2 times 3. So what do they have in common? Well, they already have one single 2 in common. All right, so then what are they missing from each other? Well, since they already have the 2, this one's missing the 3, isn't it? Okay, so it really needs to have a 3. And then this one has the 2 and a 3, but it's missing these other 2 2's. So this one needs 2 more 2's. And so do you see how what I wrote in blue is how I change these so that they look exactly the same in the denominator? All right, so we're gonna do that right now. So I'm gonna do 3/8, and what did I multiply this one by? I multiplied it by 3. So I have to multiply the numerator by 3. So in case you missed that, all I did was I rewrote this fraction, the 3/8. Sorry, I'm going to redo that again. I'll write it in different colors. So 3/8, we said it was missing the 3, so I'm multiplying top and bottom by 3. And then the other fraction, 1/6, what was it missing? It was missing the 2 2's. So I'm multiplying by those 2 2's. All right, so if I multiply those out, that gives me 3 times 3 is 9. 8 times 3 is 24. Over here in this numerator, 1 times 2 is 4. And then 6 times 2 is 24. All right, so now I have the same denominator. I can add those together. 9 plus 4 is 13, and I keep my denominator 24. All right, so all of that is just a reminder of fractions. So I'm going to skip these for now. Let's do that with some variables. All right, so if I do this with variables, notice that, remember, these are married, they stick together, and these are married, they stick together. So I can't separate them. So do you notice that these are not the same denominators? So what do I need to do is I need to multiply each of these by what they're missing. Okay, so this one is missing an x plus 2, right? Because this one had an x plus 2 and this one didn't. The one over here is missing an x plus 3. Okay, because this one had an x plus 3 and this one didn't. So what does this look like? Well, I have x times x plus 2 in the numerator here over this common denominator. Notice that I'm not distributing yet. I'm just keeping them as parentheses right now. And then over here I have 3 times x plus 3. And then I have, that is over my common denominator. I'm going to write this x plus 3 first. That way you can see the denominator looks exactly the same. So you can see right here, I've got x plus 3 times x plus 2 and x plus 3 times x plus 2. The denominators are exactly the same. So what I need to do next is I need to be able to combine those numerators. Well, right now, the way those numerators are written, I cannot combine them. All right, so here's where we're going to do some distributing. I'm not going to distribute the denominator because I don't need to combine the denominators. Those are going to be exactly the same. All I'm going to do is distribute that numerator. So that's going to be x times x is x squared. And then here I'm going to have x times 2 is 2x. Here, make sure you're distributing that minus 3. So think of it as distributing a minus 3. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And then negative 3 times positive 3 is negative 9. And all of that is over our common denominator. Remember, I'm not changing my common denominator at all. It stays exactly the same. Okay, so let's simplify this numerator just a little bit more. I have 2x minus 3x. So that's going to give me minus x. Everything else just gets recopied down. The only thing I need to do at this point is see if I can reduce anything. So at this point, this is where we simplify. Remember, we talked about simplifying fractions before. If I can factor anything, we need to do that. So can I factor this? Are there any numbers that multiply to give me negative 9 and add to give me negative 1? So remember, you're thinking about, I've got 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. Do either of these subtract to give me 1? No. So I can't factor this numerator. These are already factored. I cannot cancel anything, right? These are parentheses. They don't match any parentheses up in the numerator, so that would be my final answer. Okay, so let's recap what we did. First thing we did is factor the denominators. Then we multiply each fraction by the missing factors. So like in this example I just did, I multiplied the first fraction by x plus 2 because it was missing that factor. And in the second one, I multiplied by x plus 3. And remember, you're multiplying each fraction. I forgot the word fraction here. You're multiplying each fraction by a missing factor in both the numerator and denominator. I'm going to say top and bottom because it's just quicker for me to write that. And then once we do that, then you combine the numerators. And when I say combine, that might mean you have to distribute and then combine like terms. And then your last step should be to simplify if needed. You don't always need to, but sometimes you might need to. So let's look at one more example. Oh, maybe a few more. All right, so in this one, we're going to try to factor our denominators. Can they be factored? No, so we can skip that step. Now we're going to say, what are these missing? So this one is missing an x squared. So I want to make sure I multiply top and bottom by the x squared. This one is missing an x minus 2. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by x minus 2. So what does that leave me with? Well, my first fraction would be 2x squared over x squared times x minus 2. And then the second part would be, remember, we're going to have our minus 2 times x minus 2. Now, in order to simplify these numerators, I'm going to have to distribute. So I need to distribute here and here. Okay, so we have 2x squared. I'm going to do negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And all of that is over our common denominator, which is x squared minus x minus 2, or times x minus 2. Now, do you notice in the numerator I have a greatest common factor? So I am going to go this way. So I'm going to factor out, so I'm dividing each of these by 2, because you see how they're all even. So remember, keep that 2 in front, and then it leaves me with 1x squared minus 1x plus 2 over x squared times x minus 2. Now, the only thing else that we need to figure out is, can I factor these 3 terms? So are there any numbers that multiply to give me 2 and add to give me negative 1? Well, the only 2 numbers that multiply to give you 2 are 2 and 1, and they definitely don't add to give you 1. So I cannot factor that. I cannot cancel anything. Remember, these x squareds cannot cancel. This one's all by itself, and this one's grouped with all 3 of those. So that would be my final answer. All right, last one. I know this one looks crazy, but we just have 3 fractions, so it works the same as having 2 fractions. I need to make sure, can I factor any of the denominators? No, I cannot. So now I need to see, what are these missing? You might want to write this x squared as x times x, because what you might not have noticed is that these actually have something in common. Okay, so I wouldn't want to repeat that. Then it wouldn't be my lowest common denominator. Okay, so what is this one missing? Well, it's missing this other x over here, and it's missing the x minus 2. So I need to multiply by another x, and then an x minus 2. So make sure you do that in the numerator as well. Okay, so this one right here, it has the x minus 2, but it doesn't have these 2 x's. Okay, like this one has 2 x's, this one now has 2 x's, so this one is missing 2 x's. So I'm going to multiply by x times x. Same thing here. Over here, this one is missing, it has the 2 x's, but it's missing the x minus 2. So I need to multiply by an x minus 2. Okay, so we're going to go term by term and see what we have. Up here, I'm going to have 3 times x minus 2 in my numerator over this common denominator. Now, instead of writing x times x, I'm just going to write x squared. Don't cancel anything right now. I know it looks like, oh, I can cancel that, but we don't want to cancel. All right, the second term, I have 2 times x times x. That can be written as 2x squared. And then down here, my common denominator is x squared times x minus 2. All right, last one. Keep hanging in there with me. All right, so I have 2 times x squared in the numerator. Or, I'm sorry, 2 times x minus 2 in the numerator. And then down here, I have x squared times x minus 2. All right, all of these are common denominator, right? Those are going to stay exactly the same in the denominator. What I need to take care of are those numerators, right? So I need to distribute that. That's going to give me 3x squared minus 6x. This one doesn't have anything to distribute, so I'm just going to bring that down, plus 2x squared. This one, remember, we're distributing the negative 2. So that's negative 2x plus 4. And this is all over that common denominator, x squared times x minus 2. All right, so let's do some combining. So I've got my 3x squared and my 2x squared. That gives me 5x squared. I've got a negative 6x and a negative 2x. That's negative 8x. And then I have a plus 4. All right, down here I have x squared times x minus 2. So we're going to leave it at that. We'll come back to this and talk about simplifying it later.